We are going to stick on the topic of emerging trends for our next panel. It is called The Future is Now, and we will talk a little bit about why it's such a good time to be alive in games right now, talking about the different technologies that are emerging, whether it's X-reality, whether it's esports, whether gaming and film and everything in between. To the stage, I would like to call 3 different speakers for this session. First, we have Chris Deering, who's called the Godfather of PlayStation, who was the president of Sony Europe in the 90s when the first PlayStation was introduced. He's also been a chairman at Codemasters and a number of other notable positions, currently spearheading Narc, a studio looking to develop a game called Beyond Ever After, an upcoming MMO. I would also like to call back Neville to talk again and participate in this panel. And last but not least, Paul Holders, who's the studio director of the local studio Spiteri, which is the only, I believe, AAA studio on Malta right now. Please welcome to the stage.
Okay.
Alrighty, nice to see you all gentlemen here. Everyone has a little piece of Malta in them as well. Either it's some love or someone was born here or someone has actually come here. So I think we have a pretty good mix there. I do want to keep this panel a little bit more like a discussion though, so I won't be interviewing the panelists. I'm just going to throw a question out there and we'll see where it goes. What excites you right now? Anyone?
What is what?
What excites you right now in terms of where we're going with the tech and emerging tech and the blend of different fields?
I'll take a crack. There's so many different places there are overlaps in technology, communications, and interactivity, stimulating stickiness, etc. It's very fortunate that we're here in Malta. I noticed Malta's uniqueness when I was launching the PlayStation back in '95, and stayed in touch with Malta as they became a little more interested in games. They didn't have a lot, as Neville said in the old days, they didn't have a lot of educational programs. There was St. Martin's, and there were some projects with Malta University, but it became clear that they were starting to think in that direction as a nation, as a business, and as a commercial and government party together. I think that Malta is a perfect place for this convergence to occur. It's like an oasis with a California climate and access to all the brain power of Europe and further west in the States and South America and further east in Middle East and Asia. And because it's a country, an EU country on its own, the levels of government are quite compressed. So it's very easy to have a dialogue, no matter where you come from, whether it's crypto or esports or metaverse, there's a way to engage with the government and, more importantly, to engage with other people of the expertise. So over the last 10 years, the ecosystem here has grown in size and relevance and gravitas and in facilitation of collaboration and new ideas. And so this oasis has the combination of features that is very special, and those people who come here and begin to learn it and understand it and then love it becomes the best evangelists for Malta to do business. So I don't want to take up all the time, but I'll just tell you a little bit about Narc. Narc is from a development team that started in Iceland many years ago, working on EVE Online, and they're a little island as well. They even have a midnight sun there because of how far above the equator it is. So I thought of Malta as midnight at the oasis, and I said to the folks in Iceland, you know, you're probably going to be crossing over into the gambling or at least the game of skill area And a good place to, incubate would be Malta, who has had decades of involvement with iSport or iGaming, but emerging relevance of esports and crypto and multiplayer games, et cetera. And they came down a little bit with a bit of anticipation, not sure, but you will hear from Narc later. And they become real big fans of Malta. It's the same kind of island mentality they have there, but a little warmer, a little sunnier, and a little more diverse in the skill set. So Neville, coming from Malta originally, and then Kim Library that he mentioned, who's the CTO of Epic, also a Maltese. So I think it's in the DNA. It's games and tech and creativity and marketing expertise are all in the DNA of Malta. And Malta does the business. Whatever you need, Malta does the business. Crypto, finance, energy, education, ecosystem, talent, fun place to be, fun place to work with others. And what happens in the industry here is there are competitions and there are issues, no doubt, but fundamentally, they're all fans, and they're all evangelists, and they love getting together and sharing ideas. And that's one of the really secret benefits of having a presence here, even if it's not your main focus or the headquarters of your company. So that was my quick answer.
Perfect. Perfect. So I'm gonna throw that question, let it bounce a little bit, and see what happens. So we heard a little bit about the Malta scene here, but I want to hear a little bit more from Paul. What excites you right now in the land of games and tech?
Just looking around today at all the children that are here, for me is a completely different world from the one that I first entered into many years ago. When I entered into the games industry, there were no opportunities through schools, through universities to study, to learn how to join the industry. And here, what I'm seeing is a government that's investing in the future of the business, heavily investing, encouraging children to look at all that's going on within the games industry, giving them opportunities to talk with industry people, and basically encouraging them to think in that direction going forward. So for me, it's a fantastic opportunity for us as a business to grow, to bring in new, fresh talent in the future as well, because the industry is going to change through the people that are joining us. And I'm looking out at all these little faces walking around, looking at their eyes bulging as they spot games that they've worked on. And I'm going, yeah, that's the future. That's the people that I want to work with, that I want to invest in our business, and grow our company as we kind of spend longer here in Malta.
Perfect. Neville?
What he said, plus I'd say that it is pretty exciting to see the level of collaboration cross time zone, cross nationality, in gaming, and now, as we mentioned earlier, also beyond that.
All right, then we're going to segue a little bit into the local ecosystem. So Chris, you mentioned a couple of things that Malta has going for itself, and Neville, you've also been in LA, seeing what they do there. And Paul, I believe you're from the UK based, or
Originally, yeah.
Originally, okay, cool. So you've seen a couple of different scenes going on, and all these scenes have been successful in different ways. So I want to hear from all of you, really. What do you think are the conditions to grow a local ecosystem within the gaming and esports and the emerging tech sphere? Yeah,
I mean, I think the key thing is that there's a level of infrastructure in place now where it's less about the actual geographic location. Certainly, LA and San Francisco and several cities in the US have been hubs for game development for many years. But with the evolution of cloud computing and the standardization of technology like the game engines, Unity and Unreal, it is now possible to have the next level of sort of paradigms and education and training. And so it's very clear, even with platforms like Discord and YouTube, the proliferation of information is now such that best practices from different regions, whether it's London or LA, or become immediately accessible to any location, which is really interesting. It's a very different landscape now, certainly, than it was even 5-10 years ago.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that as well. I've been very fortunate in the companies that I've worked with to have traveled all across the globe. I spent a amount of time in the East, I've spent a lot of time in the West, and I've worked with people from pretty much every nation. And I think what I really appreciate in having that opportunity is just the different ideas that people bring. And the convergence of those ideas into something that's very fresh, very new. Yeah.
I think one of the things that Malta has, or that we think about now, and Neville raised it, is the overlap, and it's gone back quite a ways with people like Kim and Neville, who had grown up in sort of a combination of the movie business, movie production business, and game. I was in the movie business and distribution with Columbia Pictures before I got back into gaming from Atari. But the thing is that the science and the creativity and the identification with end user motivation is a very special thing that the movie industry has, and Malta has quite a respectable history in the production of movies and television programs, representing cultures that are not only Western, but increasingly Eastern, and with the location so close to Africa and the Middle East and a shorter distance to Asia, the aspect of including movie making or even music, experience. Malta runs MTV series every summer and has a big history of involvement in the music business. So whether it's the legal side or the creative side or the technical side, or how they overlap, the substructure that includes the legal profession and in some extent personnel companies and all of the things that make the machine function efficiently are in place and operating and ready for ideas, and with the financial capability to attract the money necessary to make the ideas happen. So we're at a very exciting time in the history of Malta and in the history of technology, and the future is now.
As we say. One thing I'm a little bit curious about that I hear more and more of every day is these kind of projects that are in the intersection between different fields. I'm going to give an example. Has anyone here heard of a recent game called The Quarry? Hand up. We got a couple of people, right? So for those of you who don't know, The Quarry is a game, but it's very much a cinematic experience where as a player you just choose kind of where the storyline should go. So there's no actual gameplay in it. And I think that's an interesting example of how movies and games are meeting a little bit. And I wanted to throw it out there to the panel here. See, are there any other interesting kind of merging projects that you see within the emerging tech or within esports, within next reality, for example?
I would say metaverse. Of course, it's a broad term, but another way of describing it would be an alternative creation, alternate reality. And there's a whole area of crypto and blockchain that are creeping into the discussions, and the business journals that report progress across many fields are now including sections of crypto and different types of crypto, NFTs. All of that is part of the list of ingredients going into the soup or the wok or whatever, and so they're all easily accessible or within an hour flight or two. So the future is now, even when it comes to bringing in more diverse concepts like crowdfunding, for like Crowdcube in the UK is one of the examples. It's sort of like Kickstarter for real shares of real companies, and there's a lot of that going on, but I think that will be one of the things that will emerge here as well.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of investment coming through from both crypto and NFTs right now. And it's just a new way of funding products that we're experiencing in our own gaming environment. And I think it provides the opportunity for people to put forward ideas that would normally not be funded by the usual investment channels. So it's an interesting divergence, I think, in the ways of funding. And I think it's something that's going to continue to grow. We've got something like, I think, 3, maybe 4 projects currently being produced with crypto funding. So yeah, as Chris keeps saying, the future is now, and it's continuing to develop.
Cool. Neville, you got something
certainly. I think one of the things that was discussed at GamesBeat last week was exactly that topic. That the blockchain, clearly, it's a big topic to tackle in the context of a 10-minute conversation. But as a technology, we're kind of going into the next wave, where there's sort of more general understanding of how the blockchain could be leveraged for a whole variety of new business models and investment opportunities. And I think certainly within gaming as well, in the same way that, if you kind of think back to when the iPhone first came out, right? There was this shift in gaming to a lot more sort of mobile-based gameplay and free-to-play models that emerged as a consequence of a new technology that's available, whether that was Facebook at the time and the phone. And I think similarly, as with any other technology, it takes a few years for the dust to settle, for some of the noise to go away, for some of the chaos, and then there's a new business model that emerges that is potentially really exciting for everybody involved. That certainly seems to be the case. And the opportunity, I think, with Web3 specifically is the shift to having a more decentralized ownership model, where the creators can have a higher degree of participation, which I think is exciting for a lot of developers out there.
All right, so many interesting answers, and I like that everyone is bringing their own spice to the discussion as well. This is perfect. As much fun as this is, I have to round up with one last question before we move on in the program. And that question is a little bit of a piece that I picked up on here, which is the metaverse. The metaverse, as I see it, comes like a bomb that kind of explodes and impacts all of these fields, whether it's Web3, whether it's gaming, I'm even imagining esports getting in there eventually, and also VR and X reality in specific. So I was kind of wanting to hear from the panelists, what impact do you think the metaverse will have on emerging tech within the gaming sphere, so to say?
Yeah, I mean, it's like saying, what's the impact of the internet going to be back, 30 years ago? I mean, it's that level of scale of shift and evolution. And I think, I don't know if it was Bill Gates, I'm not sure who this is attributed to, but we always overestimate what we can get done in 1 year and totally underestimate what's possible in 10 years. And so if you, from that perspective, just looking at what's possible today in environments like Fortnite, not only for gameplay, but for hanging out, learning, work. It's hard to actually imagine, what things will be like in 5 to 10 years in terms of the capability and what's going to be possible. But I think, like the internet, lots of exciting things ahead.
I always look to Ready Player One.
Yeah.
I think that gives us a good indication of where potentially it could go, and it's probably been the one driving force in my own life as to what I've wanted to achieve, is that level of immersion within the gaming world. We're not there yet, for sure, and we're still a way off, but I definitely see that's where we will end up.
I do like Ready Player One because it's a little bit dystopian, so there's an element of a cautionary tale.
Yes.
Like with every technology, there's always the good and the bad, so.
Yeah, and you even mentioned Matrix earlier as well in your keynote as well, right? Because of the alarming example. Last word, Chris.
Well, I would say AR is also part of it, and there could be applications or extensions. As Neville said, the growth over 10 years is we're probably underestimating. The growth of the next year, we're probably overestimating, but there will be combinations. So when you be walking down the street and you're wearing sunglasses and you see somebody that you think you recognize, and it was probably from a school reunion, and all of a sudden the glasses will say, that's so-and-so from your class of blah, blah, blah. And then you don't get embarrassed when you went to this. So this is little, minor but very powerful changes, but also be able to communicate instantly like Twitter does with a few characters in a visual way, with even live video, taking polls. I mean, it might be dangerous politically because people's, views change quite dramatically over time. But if you just wanted to do a survey in the UK, what percentage of you think it's time to rejoin the EU? I mean, they just did a poll. They said 57% of UK voters want to rejoin the EU. That would have never been true, that to that level, or it wouldn't have been able to discover that just overnight because somebody came up with, let's do a poll. So maybe that's not a great thing to have too much of, but if there was a serious crisis like a tsunami coming or, another wave of pandemics, it may have a role in even how places are governed. So I'm just going a little bit outside the game framework and saying this technology has, like the internet, applications that were never anticipated at the time that Berners-Lee came out with the World Wide Web. Not to mention GPS. No one thought of what Uber would be doing because the GPS didn't exist at that time. So that's why it's going to keep growing at a faster rate than we can anticipate.
Very well, very well. Well, thank you, panel. Please give a big round of applause.